Hunting down the lost tomb of King David stands as one of Jerusalem's most monumental archaeological mysteries. Although, as per Jewish, Christian, and Muslim traditions, Mount Zion is currently acknowledged as the site of David's tomb. However, scholars contend that a mere reading of the Bible is sufficient to determine that Mount Zion cannot be the correct location for one of the most notable biblical figures in history. Furthermore, the evidence indicates that Mount Zion, as we currently identify it, was not within the inhabited Jerusalem during the 10th century BCE, the time of King David. This eliminates it as a plausible candidate for the authentic location of the king's tomb. If Mount Zion isn't the accurate location, then the question that emerges is, where could it be? King David's prominence in the Bible cannot be overstated. He is a revered figure in the Old Testament, recognized as the valiant king of the Israelites who famously battled Goliath, authored numerous psalms, and served as the father of King Solomon. Therefore, it's not surprising that identifying his genuine burial spot would constitute a significant accomplishment in the domain of biblical archaeology. Before we embark on the quest to uncover the mystery of his ultimate resting place, let's journey back thousands of years to the day of his birth. Approximately in the year 1000 BC, within the modest town of Bethlehem, merely 10 kilometers from Jerusalem, a child destined to alter the course of Israel's history came into the world. He hailed from the Israelite tribe of Judah and came of age during the reign of Israel's inaugural king, Saul. Intriguingly, our first encounter with David in the Bible portrays him as anything but remarkable. He's the youngest son of Jesse, a Bethlehemite, tending to the family's sheep. When the prophet Samuel arrives at Jesse's home to offer sacrifices to the Lord and secretly anoint a new king, David isn't even summoned to the gathering. This implies that David was, to some extent, neglected and perceived as insignificant. Yet we are all aware of how he rose to become one of the most prominent biblical figures, all thanks to his victory over the Philistine giant Goliath. The path to his kingship was far from smooth. King Saul hatched a plot to assassinate him, forcing him to flee to southern Judah. Branded an outlaw with a bounty on his head, he adopted a life akin to that of Robin Hood in the desert frontier of his tribal domain in Judah. He assumed the role of a leader and organizer for a band of fellow outlaws and refugees. Gradually, they won favor with the local populace by shielding them from other marauders, or, in cases of raids, by tracking down the raiders and recovering stolen belongings. Ultimately, he fulfilled the prophecy of the prophet Samuel regarding his future as the king of Israel. He ascended to the throne following Saul's demise in a battle against the Philistines on Mount Gilboa. David is presented as the exemplar of a king in the Bible, and his numerous achievements are documented in the books of Samuel, Kings, and Chronicles. One of his achievements was the fusion of the quarrelsome tribes into one nation. He led a formidable army, numbering an impressive 288,000 soldiers. He engaged in battles, triumphing over the Philistines, launching an invasion into Moab, and overpowering a majority of their troops while imposing substantial tribute on the populace. In another campaign, King David confronted Hadadezer, the king of Zobah in Syria, whose dominion extended from the outskirts of Damascus to the eastern borders of the Euphrates. He achieved victory by conquering Hadadezer's forces, subjugating his people, and even sending the finest horses as tribute to Jerusalem. These remarkable back-to-back triumphs not only solidified King David's reign, but also propagated his reputation far and wide. His prowess earned him the reputation of being one of the most formidable rulers in the East. David's life was captivating, and so was the tale of his passing. According to legend, as his life neared its end, he beseeched God to unveil the exact moment of his departure from the earthly realm. However, God chose not to disclose this, merely indicating the day of the week, Shabbat. David took it upon himself to devote each Shabbat to the intense study of Torah, hoping to outsmart the angel of death and delay his soul's departure. When David's predetermined time arrived, the angel of death tried to distract the king from his studies by causing a commotion in his garden, shaking the trees. Curious, David ascended the stairs to investigate, but a step gave way under his feet. Surprised and momentarily distracted, he paused from his scholarly pursuits, and it was at that very moment that the king passed away at the age of 70. The incorrect belief about King David's burial on Mount Zion evolved over several centuries. In the midst of the 2nd century CE, Jerusalem faced destruction, leading to the expulsion of Jews from the region and the subsequent loss of accurate information regarding the actual location of King David's tomb. Around the mid-4th century, records began indicating that the tombs of King David and his father Jesse were situated in Beit Lechem. The initial reference to Mount Zion as King David's purported burial spot emerged in the 9th century. By the 11th century, this misconception had become deeply entrenched. The Crusaders, affirming this belief, constructed a Gothic cenotaph, an empty sarcophagus, to designate the site, a structure that endures to the present day. In the 12th century, Benjamin of Tudela, a vibrant Jewish traveler, shared an intriguing tale during his visit to Jerusalem. According to his account, while residing in the city, he heard a remarkable story about the rediscovery of King David's tomb. As the narrative goes, 2 Jewish laborers were hired by a Christian patriarch to restore a damaged structure on Mount Zion. During their work, they stumbled upon a concealed passage and found themselves inside a palace adorned with marble columns. Inside, they discovered a table bearing a golden scepter and crown, surrounded by wealth. Convinced they had discovered King David's tomb, they were suddenly struck by a powerful gust of wind and heard voices urging them to depart immediately. Subsequently, the 2 workers fell ill and remained bedridden, unwilling to return to the site despite persuasion attempts, 3 days after the encounter. In 1913, during the reign of the Ottoman Empire, a pivotal moment in the search for King David's tomb occurred. Raymond Weil, a distinguished French archaeologist and Egyptologist, led groundbreaking excavations in the ancient sector of Jerusalem. The significance lay in his dual role as an archaeologist and a member of the Jewish faith. As an archaeologist, he possessed the expertise to excavate skillfully, and as a Jewish individual, he utilized the Bible as a guide, akin to a treasure map, in his endeavor to locate King David's tomb. One of his initial actions was to create a map of Jerusalem, marking the location of the ancient city of David, as it was one of the oldest parts of Jerusalem. To navigate his search for King David's tomb, Raymond Weil used the Bible as a sort of treasure map. He focused on specific verses, with the first being Book 1 Kings chapter 2 verse 10, which mentions, "Then David slept with his ancestors and was buried in the city of David." Recognizing that if he were to discover the tomb of King David, it would likely be situated within the 11-acre area identified through archaeology as the City of David. He focused his search on that specific area without concern for the rest of the city. Another of his significant sources concerning the whereabouts of the royal burial site can be found in Nehemiah chapter 3, where the teams assigned to restore the walls of Jerusalem are detailed. The narrative meticulously outlines the groups of laborers and the specific segment of the wall they were responsible for repairing, systematically encircling the city walls. It specifically mentions Shallun, the son of Kol-Hoseh, overseeing the construction of various parts, including the wall of the pool of Shiloah until the stairs that go down from the city of David. Additionally, Nehemiah, the son of Azbuk, is noted to have mended the wall up to the point opposite the tombs of the house of David. This account provides a clear indication that even 500 years after King David's burial, the precise location of his tomb remained well known, situated near the southeast corner of the city within the walls, in proximity to the Siloam, also known as the Shiloh Pool. Weil, displaying astuteness, directed his attention to the southwestern side, where he identified an ancient pool that would later be recognized as the Pool of Siloam. He discovered the wall being rebuilt during Nehemiah's time and traced it northward. He discerned that somewhere opposite a specific wall section would likely mark the end of the first segment, leading to the commencement of the second section. With this estimation, he marked a spot with a red X, aligning it with biblical descriptions. This marked the focal point of his excavation efforts. Starting in January of 1914, Raymond Weil initiated excavation in that designated area. He engaged 200 local laborers from the village of Silwan and utilized 30 donkeys to facilitate the transportation of excavated earth to designated disposal sites beyond the excavation zone, as detailed in his excavation report. Weil made a noteworthy discovery of 8 cave-like structures that he identified as tombs, along with an additional 9th cave during a subsequent expedition from 1923 to 1924. These caves were labeled T1 through T9, and Weil asserted that the most significant among them, T1, was the tomb of King David. T1 is an extensive tunnel exhibiting certain characteristics of an ancient burial cave. Regrettably, these caves were repurposed as a quarry during the Roman era, posing challenges for restoration efforts. Moreover, Weil's explorations in the area led to yet another impactful discovery that bolstered his assertion. He unearthed fragments of an ornate building, complete with intricately carved pieces, including portions of pillars. Most notably, he came across a dedicatory inscription that clearly identified the structure as a synagogue. This inscription, known as the Theodotus inscription, can be viewed today at the Israel Museum, while a replica is on display at the original discovery site. The inscription reads that Theodotus, a synagogue leader and descendant of synagogue leaders, built this synagogue for Torah readings, dating back to the 1st century BC. This implies that even in the generations preceding the 1st century BC, a synagogue existed in the vicinity of the tombs associated with the House of David. It's a compelling notion that a synagogue would be situated so close to King David's tomb, allowing Jews to gather for scripture readings in such close proximity to this significant site. Unsurprisingly, Weil's theory has been met with skepticism. Alternate researchers contend that the caves he came across do not closely resemble other tombs from the First Temple period. Moreover, they argue that there is no definitive evidence linking these structures to King David's era in the 10th century BCE. Instead, they propose that these well-structured formations might have served as water cisterns or cellars during the Second Temple period. However, proponents of Weil's theory argue that the structure's layout is not suitable for serving as cisterns, pointing to the puzzling presence of a hole at the base if the purpose was water retention. Additionally, the specific carvings uncovered by Weil were undeniably unique, comprising 2 adjacent rock-cut tunnels. These formations differed markedly from any previously observed cisterns. The archaeologists endorsing Weil's theory were firmly persuaded that Weil's excavation site stood as the most formidable contender for the burial site of the ancient kings of the city. The quest to find King David's tomb is akin to an archaeological adventure, merging historical records, religious convictions, and scientific inquiries. Regardless of whether we have ultimately unveiled the genuine resting place of King David, what remains paramount is the steadfastness of our faith in the authenticity of the Bible's accounts. What are your thoughts about this? I hope you like our story. Until the next one.